Hi, I'm Don Kettl, and I'm professor at the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin. And I want to spend a couple minutes taking you through a whirlwind trip of this thing we call the Electoral College, this thing that for some reason the founders created that's so hard to understand, which has such an enormous impact on the way that we choose the President of the United States. And the question is, why is it that we did this sort of thing? Because the system that we've got is actually unique in the world. There is really no other country that does it quite the same way that we do. To understand the basics, it's that the voters in the United States don't really elect the president. What we do when we go to the polls is we elect, although it's not really clear usually when we look at the ballots, we choose electors that are committed to individual presidential candidates. So we elect electors, the electors elect the president. That means that the candidate who gets a majority of the vote may not necessarily be the one who becomes president of the United States. That happened with Al Gore in 2000, happened to Hillary Clinton in 2016. In both cases, they actually got more votes than their opponents, but their opponents got more electoral votes, which made them president of the United States. How is it that we created this, and why do we do this sort of thing? The idea grew from Alexander Hamilton back in the days of the founding. And when he was in the room where it happened, one of the ideas that he had to make it happen was to figure out how to solve a basic problem. The United States, if it was going to become a United States, had to decide how to balance power between large states with high populations and smaller states with very low populations. The smaller states were really nervous and jealous about the power of the large states, and the large states didn't want the smaller states telling them what to do. So Hamilton said, I got an idea. How about if we create this thing called an electoral college that would allow the people in each state to choose who it is they wanted to represent them as president, and then have the states themselves be involved, state by state, choosing the president of the United States. So as a way to try to balance the role of the large states and the small states, the voters choose electors. The voters in those days were only men, only white men, and they chose electors, and then the electors chose the president. The voting makeup has changed since, but the Electoral College hasn't. And the way in which it works is this. We go to the polls on election day. When we vote for electors who are pledged for the candidate of our choice. So we don't really vote for the candidate, but we vote for electors pledged to that candidate. The state then certifies who it is who wins the state. So they sit down, count all the votes. Whoever it is who wins the majority of the votes in the state then gets all the electors that come along with that. In most states, it's every single one of the electors. In Texas, that means 38 electoral votes. The electors then meet in the state capitals in what is called the Electoral College. So the college is not actually a college in the sense that we know it, but a college in the sense that it pulls together a group of people in the traditional classical sense of the word college. This year it'll be 2020 on December 14th. The electors get together in each state capital, they vote, and when they vote, the candidate who gets at least 270 votes is elected president. So it's a very complicated process. The majority of the vote in each state determines the electors meet, the electors then vote on who becomes president in this thing we call the Electoral College, and whoever it is who gets at least 270 votes becomes elected president of the United States. The electoral votes are allocated to each state according to their population, and so that they really range from as 3 in Delaware, for example, 3 in Montana to 38 in Texas, 55 in California. And so all you have to do to win all the electoral votes is to win that state by just one more vote than your opponent. So it's a very complicated system that has grown up over time in a way that has really transformed the way we think about politics and makes the United States unique in the world. We, as I mentioned, vote for electors, but in most states, the electors don't have to vote for the candidate who receives the majority of the vote. So it's like, huh? How can this possibly be? Again, we remember that we don't actually vote for the candidate, but we vote for the electors. The electors meet. The electors are supposed to vote for whoever it is who gets the majority of the votes in the state. But in practice, we have this problem that's occurred on a regular basis called a faithless elector, which is an elector who breaks faith with the candidates that they pledged to support and with the voters who elected them. In Texas, for example, back in 2016, two of the Trump electors actually voted for other candidates. So Trump lost two electoral votes as a result of that. In 24 states, there are punishments for faithless electors who choose to go elsewhere, but those punishments have never been actually exercised. And the fact is that once the electors vote according to the Constitution, no one can change their votes. And so this varies state by state. In some states, there are requirements or where the votes are counted automatically. Other states have a proportional system where the electors are broken down according to the population that or the percentage of the vote. But in many states, it's not automatic. And it creates the potential for a lot of confusion that was created by our founders way back at the beginning. In fact, created by people like James Madison, who was the principal author of the Constitution. Can it be changed? Should it be changed? There are a lot of ways that we could do this. Anything that would require a change would also require an amendment to the Constitution. That's complicated. 2/3 of the vote of the US Senate and the House of Representatives required to send it to the states. And then 3/4 of the states have to approve the change in the Constitution. That's 38 out of the 50 states. That is a very, very big deal. So complicated that, in fact, when it comes to this question, it has never actually been done. And despite the fact there are lots of proposals, there are proposals, for example, to abolish the Electoral College and to make a majority of the votes of the population determining whoever it is who wins the presidency. There are provisions to make the electoral votes automatic based on who it is who actually wins the presidency vote in each individual state. There are lots of proposals for changing it. None has ever won a majority of support, despite the fact that we've had occasions in both 2000 and 2016 that the candidate who won a majority of the vote actually did not win the majority of the electoral vote. Turns out that this really matters a lot because it's something that nobody really likes, except for those who benefit from it. And one of the reasons why it hasn't changed is that there really are winners. It favors two parties and makes it hard for newer parties to break in because it's very hard for these small parties to be able to get enough electoral votes to be able to get into the game. There's speculation and some analysis that suggests that it probably favors Republicans over Democrats. One of the reasons why in 2000 and 2016, it was the Democratic candidate who won the majority of the vote, but not the electoral vote. It favors swing states. If you live in California, you're not going to be seeing any presidential candidate, even though it's winner take all and California has more electoral votes than anyone else. Candidates don't spend their time campaigning where it doesn't make any difference. And on the other hand, you see candidates going through Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Iowa, relatively small states, but who have an outsized importance because tiny margins in their states can create winner take all situations where the candidates can win all the electoral votes, which means that the candidates focus just on those swing states to the exclusion of everybody else. It's an incredibly complicated system. It's one that has been with us since the very beginning. It's something that historians and political scientists every 4 years pay attention to, but now it's important for us to pay attention to it as well, because it determines who's going to be the next president of the United States.